Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith to the New York City metropolitan area. Please download the app. Share it with your friends. You'll have access to all of our station's content. If you like what Joe and I do, we have all of our interviews that we do posted on social media all across Rumble, X, Facebook, YouTube, and also we go live Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern time, where we get in a little bit more trouble than we get in here at the Veritas Catholic Radio Network. Today, excuse me, we're welcoming back to the program a friend of the show, Dale Ahlquist, and this is going to be a great conversation because, and I'll tell you why in a second. But Dale has written a new book, Localism: Coming Home to Catholic Social Teaching. Now, Joe and I are of the opinion that all Catholics should go into the last 150 years or so of Catholic social teaching. It would really raise your consciousness about economics, where we think along the lines of capitalism, communism, and which is more desirable. The Catholic Church has a lot to say, certainly about communism and against communism, but also critical. The church has a critical eye towards consumerism and rabid capitalism, which is not desirable for anyone. Okay, we're going to talk about that with Dale. So this is a very important topic. And for those of you, everybody out there I know knows Dale Ahlquist. Having said that, he is the president of the G.K. Chesterton Society of G.K. Chesterton. He's the creator and host of the EWTN television series, The Apostle of Common Sense. He's the author of 6 books, the editor of 16 more books, and publisher of Gilbert Magazine. He's the co-founder of the first Chesterton Academy, a classical Catholic high school in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which gave birth to the growing Chesterton Schools network that now includes almost 70 schools in the United States and 4 other countries. Dale Ahlquist, welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe, our brother.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Joe.
Absolutely. And like I said, Dale, we'll get into it. I think more people out there really need to get, they need to dig into Rerum Novarum Quadragesimo
Anum.
It was quadragesimo. What is it again?
Anum, quadragesimo
Anum. And John Paul II too, Centesimus Annus. So anyway, we'll get into it. I'm going to hand it over to Joe. Dale, we'll start with a prayer.
Name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, never was it known that anyone who sought your help or sought your intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto you, a virgin of virgins, our mother. To you we come, for you we stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in your clemency hear and answer us. Amen. Name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Joe, did you like my Latin there on him?
I did. I was pleasantly surprised at that, Joe.
That's about as far as it goes. I don't even speak English, Dale. I'm from New Jersey, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Let's talk defining terms. Localism. What is it? What is distributism as an alternative to socialism and capitalism? Let's lay the ground rules, and then we'll keep it moving.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with distributism and how we came up with localism because of distributism, okay? So distributism is a social political idea that formed by Chesterton and his friend Hilaire Belloc in the early 20th century, basically trying to implement the philosophy first proposed by Rerum Novarum and Pope Leo XIII. And in that document, in that encyclical, Pope Leo XIII was pointing out that the modern social system was in great distress. And it was, for him, he was reacting specifically to industrial capitalism, which had turned most major cities into appalling wastelands where most workers were treated no better than slaves.
Give us a time period there.
Late 19th century. So his encyclical was written in 1891. So he's talking about the late 19th century. And so he pointed out that the wrong solution to this social quagmire, the wrong solution was socialism, which is what everybody was embracing. It was a natural reaction against capitalism. It doesn't say it in a document, but a lot of people forget the original term for capitalism was individualism. It was people following their individual interests, and that's why socialism was called socialism, saying no, the community interests are more important than the individual interests. And so the Pope says, no, socialism is the wrong solution. The right solution is for more workers to become owners, to have a stake in their own production. So in other words, they should benefit from their work as producers, and the best benefit to give them the most independence and most dignity is for them to be owners, to be having a stake in it. And property has always been considered a good thing in all Catholic teaching. It goes back to the 10 Commandments. You know, thou shalt not steal indicates that property is a good thing, just like thou shalt not commit adultery means marriage is a good thing, right? And so property has always been honored as necessary for the family. And I think the main point of distributism is that the family is the basis of society, not the individual and not the community. The family has to be nurtured and supported by the society and by the political system more than any other entity. If you support individual rights, you'll undermine the family. If you support community rights, you'll undermine the family. So recognizing that the family is the main unit, obviously a family has to be able to support itself. The best way to create independence is ownership. So
I would agree with all that. I would absolutely
so Chesterton's
agree.
main argument is that the opposite of employment is not unemployment. The opposite of employment is independence.
I want to just comment on that because this is
Yep.
something John Paul said after
Mhm.
communism fell in Poland, and I absolutely think he's spot on. He was warning the people. He said, "We just went through communism. Look what happened. Be careful of capitalism because unfettered capitalism is as destructive." Absolutely a fact.
Aren't we seeing that now?
I was just going to say, as a result of COVID, people forget this, the largest transfer of wealth in the history of America took place. The government picked and chose winners and losers. I could remember during COVID, I would go to Lowe's. This is in March of 2020, July of 2020, the peak. People are dying. I'm not one of those people. It was real. People died. People died. At least by me, the hospitals were packed with people dying. I had 2 children during COVID. So I am fully aware of what happened. However, in Lowe's, the line was 30 yards long inside. The air in Lowe's was somehow okay. Meanwhile, you couldn't go shopping. You couldn't go to church. Why was the air not good in those buildings, but in Lowe's, it was fine? The government picked and chose winners. Largest transfer of wealth in the history of America. Where am I going with this? Capitalism without moral boundaries does not work. What America did wrong, in my book, is, to your point, it didn't incentivize the family. You're married 5 years, you get a tax break. You're married 10 years, you get another tax break. You're married 20 years, you get a tax break. You're married 30 years, you get a tax break. You get 5 kids, you get a tax break. 7 kids, you get a tax break. It also didn't incentivize religion, which instills morality inside of people, which, because you can't force morality, you can't legislate morality, you have to build it. That's the mistake of capitalism. How does that differ from distributism, what I just said in terms of my interpretation of John Paul?
So distributism has to do again with many small businesses, many people being their own employer, being their own owner. And the reason why Lowe's was kept open, but your local mom and pop shop was closed, is because of what you just said. It's a combination of big government and big business lining up against the rights and the dignity of the common man. I have got another great example for you. I knew a guy from Florida. In Florida, you have to have a ceiling fan, right? A ceiling fan is necessary to live in Florida. He goes to the local ceiling fan shop, the locally owned shop, and it was closed down during COVID. And they told him, oh, you can order that through Amazon.
There you go.
There you go. Okay. So the local guys put out of business while the big remote centralized Grand Soviet distribution center is kept open. Do you understand? So the idea is distributism is a confusing word because everyone thinks it's redistribution. They associate it with socialism, and it's always been criticized. Well, that's socialism. And so one of the things we needed was a better word to describe the same idea, which was a small ownership, property-based, family-based economy. And the thing that finally epitomized it was a term that everybody recognizes what it means right away. Localism. Keep your dollars local, keep your control local. One of the principles of Catholic social teaching is subsidiarity. Subsidiarity, which means the things that affect you most directly should be under your control. It's decentralization. That means we don't want a remote centralized government or a remote centralized commercial system controlling our lives. Our dollars and commerce should be as local as possible. So should our politics. We should be more important. It should be more important to us who's at City Hall. In fact, we should have a hand in what's going on at City Hall than what's going on at national politics. Most people don't even know who their local city council are, but they all know who's running for president. And it's that local decision that affects them more directly than what happens in Washington, D.C. And it should be that way.
No, absolutely. Dale Ahlquist is joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Please go out and buy his book. It's available at Sophia Press. If you're watching this on social media, we're going to post a link in the description. Hey, get a little bit of a discount because you're buying it through Joe and Joe. Localism, coming home to Catholic social teaching. I've heard Catholics, very intelligent Catholics, ask this question. What's the difference between socialism and distributism? Now, I'm going to throw something out there to you, Dale. I think Catholics, I think we tend, if you're a serious Catholic, we tend to be more politically conservative in our worldview. Okay, I don't think that that's an outrageous statement to make. So we're going to lean more to the right. The problem is this, though. We then, whether you're on the left or whether you're on the right, the temptation is always to set up false idols, and you don't even know that that's a false idol. Case in point. Conservatives that you see out there, some Catholic, some not Catholic, they seem to bend their knee at the altar of the free market. I've been saying that for years. Joe and I have been saying it on the show. The market is a good thing, not a bad thing. It's a very good thing. Raises people out of poverty, okay? But it's not an idol. The market is not God. That means that through government action, yes, conservatives, government action, the government needs to step in sometimes to right or wrong. Case in point, Joseph Pierce, your friend. All right, he's been on the show a couple of times. We love Joseph Pierce. I mentioned to you before we came on, Dale. He did a debate with Jay Richards. Okay, I think it was at the Napa Institute, and he made a very good point. He gave a great example of how companies can get too big, but now if you have targeted government action, okay. He used the example of a beer company that bought all the taverns in the town. Okay. So, and the only beer you could sell in the taverns was the beer that the major company produced, thereby killing all the competition. Okay. And the government passed an ordinance that at the very least they had to promote at least one opposing brewery, local brewery in their taverns once a week. Okay. So that people would know and expose those products. Some people consider that socialism or undue government burdens. I think that was a brilliant idea. And Joseph Pierce made the point that those companies that produced those brews, the local breweries that were promoted in those taverns, went on and became very successful. It opened up to some competition and more consumer choice. But here's I know I'm ranting a little bit, Dale. The point is, government action in that case was targeted and it was effective. And it worked. And conservatives need to get it through their heads that sometimes government action is necessary in a capitalist free market system. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Well, you're not wrong. The folks who argue there should be no government interference at all are libertarians, and that's basically a form of anarchy, is what it is. If there's no government, that's anarchy. And so you have to have government. And while government should have a limited role because government is there to protect freedom, that's what it's for, is to protect freedom and to punish those who break laws that break the social order. The point of commerce is not just the building of wealth. And that's where Catholics have to understand. The point of commerce is to provide freedom for as many people as possible, but most of all to protect the family. And it's not supposed to promote greed. And so that's why if you keep it local, everyone's needs are met. People can still have the freedom and dignity to raise their family and make the right choices for their family. That's what you want. And you want for as many people as possible to do that. And if everyone becomes simply an employee of the one company that has risen to the top, basically their employer is calling all the shots for them anymore. They're not free. They're just another form of slave, which we call a wage slave. And their lives are very controlled. Chesterton says some people are he says it's cheap to own a slave, it's cheap to be a slave. Because the corollary of freedom is responsibility. And some people don't want to take responsibility for their own lives. They're happy to do whatever they're told to do. And they're lazy. And they don't want to give a lot of thought to anything. And that's where you end up with the masses working for somebody else. And Chesterton says that's not an ideal society. It's not for a stable economy either, because what upsets an economy, if something shakes at the top, the whole economy suffers. If you have
well, Dale, there's another golden calf for you right there.
Yeah.
Economic growth. Now, growth is important. I would agree with that. You should have a growing economy. But you mentioned the right word that's you're supposed to talk about, especially as Catholics. I want economic stability.
Stability, yeah.
Economic growth is great, but if you have an unstable economy,
how do we measure economic growth? What's the main way we measure it?
Usually it's corporate profits.
Yeah, corporate profits, which is based on employment, and not which means most people are employees. It doesn't. You can't measure an economy based on a bunch of small owners because they're not employees. And so we're always measuring employment because we are used to this system where you generally have to work for somebody else.
I agree with everything you both said. I want to just play devil's advocate for a moment.
That's what you're here for.
And that's what I'm going to do. Basically, I absolutely agree. But here's the deal. Unless you're grounded in God, and unless you basically are saying to yourself, which is how I try to live and always did, this is not my home, I'm renting. If you're not of that mindset, you're not going to do that, Dale, and I'm going to tell you why. Say I'm super gifted, which I'm not, but say I am. I'm brilliant. I've been given amazing gifts, and I can make a ridiculous amount of money, and there's a lot of people that do that in America. What they do, and many of them are Catholic, they say, good for me, too bad for you, Dale. Tough crap. I'm super gifted. I could operate on your eyeball. I could do something that you can't, you never will be able to. You're not able to do it. I'm going to benefit. Tough crap. I'll give you a crumb in the corner. And that's how people operate. I've seen this my whole life. I've worked with people who went to great Catholic schools. They throw elbows like animals. They live like Machiavellian animals. They went to Notre Dame, Georgetown. They don't live like that. They say, good for me, too bad for you. And in order to have that mindset across the board, you have to have God at the center. Tell me if I'm wrong. And if I'm right, how do you do that if the people aren't doing it? Because I could groove with it, but the guy next door is going to say, whatever, Joe, you drive your 20-year-old car. I'm going to drive a Mercedes and I'm going to enslave you, because that's how America works.
Okay, so first of all, you're absolutely right by saying unless we have a society that's centered on God, we can't see any basis for a social improvement, or ministry to develop a just and fair and equitable social system, of course. And of course, that's what the founding fathers said when they created their laws, is that, you have to have a moral people. These laws don't work without a moral people. All right. So that's the given. Now to your point, I'm the eye surgeon that can save your sight, and no one else can do what I do. And therefore, I will take all your money in order to save your sight. And that's because that's the way I'm going to operate, and literally. And we can, you know, the natural reaction against that from the masses who are not so thusly gifted are going to, of course, to become socialists. So you're going to, if you operate that way, we will unite against you and prevent you from having all the money. We want everybody to have all the money. So we have to take the only way we can stop that is to have no ownership whatsoever and take away all ownership, and the government's going to own everything. And that's the only fair and equitable way to distribute property. So you understand that the wild capitalist who takes as much as he can because of his great talent and wealth building, whether it's his talent or it's just his ability to make money, there's always going to be the reaction against that from many, many, many more people than just those few powerful people that will eventually attack that system and bring it down with a communist solution. That's always a natural reaction to it. Distributism / socialism is proposing something that's going to be the best for everybody, still involves property ownership and and individual rights. It doesn't throw everything to the community. It throws it to it recognizes the family is the most important thing. And it will be the local conscience of any community. The whole idea is that all change starts locally. There are no top-down solutions. Anytime you have an attempt at a top-down solution, it's going to be a tyrannical act. It's going to be something that is socially disruptive, and it's going to be by compulsion. It's by a police action. Localism is proposing changing a society from the bottom up, from the grassroots level, to create more justice, more independence, more freedom, and to be the moral conscience at the local level. And to not be controlled by something high above. Now, and then of course there's also the practical historical lesson that individual that does make all that wealth, what happens to his family? His family all become communists.
Yeah, they go to Ivy League schools.
Yeah, exactly. They all become communists. There's a great anecdote about these foreign ambassadors discussing things at Washington, D.C. back in the 1980s. And an ambassador from one of the African countries was talking, and they asked this African ambassador where he was sending his kid to college. He says, "I'm sending them to the University of Czechoslovakia." They said, "Well, why?" He says, "Well, because all of my fellow ambassadors have sent their kids to Harvard and Yale, and they all come out communists." I'm saying Czechoslovakia so that they won't become communists.
Tell me about it. Dale Ahlquist is joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Dale's new book, Localism, Coming Home to Catholic Social Teaching. That's available at Sophia Press. And by the way, click the link in the description. You buy the book, you get a little bit of discount because you know Joe and Joe. I think, Dale, see, I mean, anybody who doesn't know us, they might be listening to this conversation, think we're a bunch of anti-American, like we're bashing our system. But to be an American means to be critical. Okay, we could be critical of things. We go into the public arena. We don't have to accept everything. Okay, we have certain basic principles that we accept, mostly embodied in our founding documents.
Amen.
Okay, but the idea of Americanism is a problem. It's a problem because when you watch, and I'm not picking on him, okay? You listen to a Sean Hannity who grew up Catholic and is no longer Catholic, okay? He strikes me as a guy who bends the knee to the free market. You can't do anything, no government action whatsoever. And unfortunately, there's working people in America who have bought into that, who are getting ravaged by their employers. And again, we could get into the conditions that are, in our view, Joe and my view, deliberately set in America to drive wages down, whether it be mass immigration, taking jobs away and driving wages down, women in the workplace, sexual liberation in the 1960s, driving wages down. Not every woman wants to be in the workplace. Many women want to be home raising the kids. This drives wages down. I grew up in a time, my father worked for Consolidated Freightways. My father started working for CF in 1963, making $2.15 an hour, and that was a great job. That was a great job. Okay. And the thing is, I think a lot of our problems are not to blame. Don't point your finger at the socialists and the communists all the time, although they've done a masterful job. It's not desirable for me, and we'll probably pick this up after the break, but I'm going to throw it over you to start, Dale. It's not desirable for me for Apple to have a $3 trillion market capitalization. It doesn't benefit me. Maybe if I worked for Amazon and they gave me some shares, it might benefit me.
Well,
Dale, I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah,
What,
most importantly, it doesn't benefit the family, and that's the main thing we got to keep focusing on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like if I'm a working man, see, I found out recently because we were all learning in life. So what I heard in the last couple of years was because you always hear about minimum wage and this and that, family wage is what we should be pushing for. One man goes, and what's the standard for that? One man goes out into the workforce and earns enough money to bring home to the family to provide for the family's needs. If you're not meeting that, there's a problem. Dale, we'll start. I'll throw it over to you. We have a couple minutes before the break, and we can pick it up after the break. I think you know where I was going with my little rant there. So go ahead, Dale. I'm going to throw it over to you.
Okay. Well, we are, to respond to the first thing you said, yeah, we are, because we're criticizing the system, it doesn't mean we're anti-American. On the contrary, we criticize the system because we love our country. That's the whole point. Chesterton says that you have to, you love the thing enough to defend it, but you hate it enough to want to change it, right? It's that's the paradox. You know something's not serving the benefit of the many, so you work to change those things, and so it's easy for conservatives, and rightly so, to criticize a socialist system, as we should. It doesn't work. It simply does not work. It means big government controlling everything. But we also have to understand we don't want big business controlling everything. All the arguments against big government also work against big business. And Chesterton makes this point in 1910 in his book, What's Wrong with the World? He said, it's Hudge and Gudge. Big government, big business are the things that are undermining the rights of the common man. The other two things that were wrong, there are four things wrong with the world in 1910. Big government, big business, feminism, and public education. All right. So it's actually, and so, yeah, public education is something that we could fight with localism, because localism means that local school board has to be answerable to the parents who are sending their kids to the school.
Well, Dale, that's a conversation that we want to expand on a little bit more. So let's come back after the break. All right. I apologize for cutting you off. Dale Ahlquist is joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Please go out and buy his book. Dale, I'm not just saying this because Joe and I we've been following you for years. I mean, we know you've been on EWTN for years. You have a lot to offer. Joe and I are very privileged that we have people like you come on our show, because but Catholics need to avail themselves of the knowledge that you bring to the table, especially your knowledge of Chesterton, who had a knowledge of everything. Okay. So you got to go out and you got to buy Dale's new book, Localism, Coming Home to Catholic Social Teaching, that's available at Sophia Press. Click the link in the description, and then you'll get a little bit of a discount because you know Joe and Joe. Dale Ahlquist is with us. We have another great segment. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. We're way in the breach on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network with Dale Ahlquist, and we're discussing his new book available at Sophia Press, Localism, Coming Home to Catholic Social Teaching. So before the break, okay, we started talking about we were talking about the idea of big business is not our friend either, just like big government is not our friend. But you were segueing, Dale, into education and the need to keep education local. Please continue.
Yeah. So, the Chesterton says when we gave the government the right to and the duty to educate our children, we gave the government more power than it's ever had in all of history. Because you're forming the minds of our young people at the most critical time in their lives, and to put that in the hands of the government, which by its own limitation cannot teach the most important thing, which is God. That's a recipe for disaster, and we are seeing that played out every day. But that is a result of course, big government controlling these essential things that should be controlled locally. If you have a local school board that truly is accountable to the local parents who are sending their kids to the school, which pretty much is what it used to be 100 years ago. That's, the schools represented a morality that the community actually believed in, and we had a great public school system for a long time, but it was a recipe for failure because education got bigger and bigger and less local. And now I think the public schools are pretty much irredeemable. And our solution is you start your own school. That's why we've started Chesterton academies all over the country. That's the way parents take control of their children's education again, is by starting the school themselves and controlling, what the formation of their children. That's what it's got to be based on the family.
But it does require that, number one, those parents need to educate themselves as to what's going on. And it requires slaying some golden calves. It requires you have to destroy some idols, one of which is teachers' unions. Okay. One of which is the Department of Education. Why? Like people look at you like you're strange. Like you just got off the spaceship from Mars when you say the United States Department of Education needs to be abolished. It's a waste of $100 billion a year. And they don't do a damn bit of good. And it's, to your point, Dale, if for no other reason, because it's those people over there telling you 3/4 of the way across the country, okay, how you're going to educate your children. You know how to educate your children. Here's my argument. I want to throw this at Joe. I'm sorry to take up the time, Joe, but I want to stay on education for a second. Here's my argument, okay, is that when you think about, look at the attacks by the left primarily when it comes to homeschooling, okay? Homeschooling is just, to me, that's local education. All my teachers at First Avenue School were all mostly women who lived in the neighborhood. They knew us outside of school. They knew our parents, okay? They were good teachers. I went to a good public school, okay? Until the Department of Education decided to wreck the public schools, okay? Is like, but I've always envisioned the idea of homeschooling is, yeah, the smart mother in the neighborhood, okay, she actually teaches all the kids in the neighborhood, like Little House on the Prairie type thing. And that's a fantastic model for education. But you have to you have to raise your consciousness as a parent and say, but you can't let them tell you that this is something that's, number one, that's never been tried, and number two, is not practical. Well, what's practical? Children getting brainwashed by a bunch usually of leftist elitists. I'll give you give you a minute to comment on that, Dale.
Well, the first thing you measure the public schools is because can the kids read and write, and do they know how to do math? And the answer is no, they don't. They don't know how to read and write and do math, which is what the 3 R's is what the schools used to be based on. Our kids are graduating with no ability to use their brains at all. They haven't had anything put in their heads except electronic media, and the electronic media is now the form of education. Now our classrooms are computer screens, and guess who benefits from that? Big business. Your pals at Apple again. They're the ones who benefit from that. And right. Again, we're taking the human element out of it. We're taking the dignity of the person, and we're taking the family out of it.
Absolutely, Dale.
The local control is what you need, and that's what we don't have.
All right, and everybody out there needs to go out and buy Dale's book, Localism, Coming Home to Catholic Social Teaching, available at Sophia Press. Click the link in the description, take you right to Sophia's website, and you put in the title, and you'll be able to buy the book. And please do so, and you'll get a little bit of a discount. Joe Resinello, where do you want to go with Dale Ahlquist?
I want to talk about the parish, because it doesn't get more local than the parish. We're not doing a good job. I'm just being honest. We're not. I go to church, always did. We go to church, we run away. That's number one. I'm going to tell you who's doing a good job and embodying everything that you just talked about. I witness it because I live in New Jersey, 10 miles outside of New York. Orthodox Jews. They get it. They don't even have Jesus, and they get it. I drove through an Orthodox Jewish community one Saturday in Teaneck, New Jersey with my wife. So edified. 3 generations walking to the temple together. They get it. Local businesses support each other. You never see it, excuse me, an Orthodox Jewish family sending their kid to public school. They educate their kids at a reasonable cost. They have their own businesses. Who's the baker? Who's the lawyer? Who's the accountant? They take care of themselves. The food market. Excuse me, guys. It's the stupid ass Catholics. Sorry, we're stupid. We absolutely go along with the society and we go right off the cliff. And then we wonder why our kids are divorced, they're mentally ill, they're on dope, they married some lunatic. We don't get it. They get it. I watch it. I watched it my whole life. I live next door to them. They get on the bus with me. They get it. They have beautiful families. They live locally. They do it while the society is against them and they succeed at it. Why don't we? Know why, yeah? And I'm going to tell you, again, this is honesty time. We don't take our religion serious.
Amen.
We don't take our religion serious, and they do. Oh, there are some Catholics that do. The rest of us, we go along with everybody else. We send our kids to the schools. They come back crazy. They tell us that they're giraffes when they come home. They go along. They marry people who are
They
crazy.
wear tails now.
And
They
this
wear
is why we can do what they do, Dale. I watch it. And I'll be honest with you, we don't. We could do it right at the parish level. We could do everything they do. And you know something? We have Jesus. We have Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, and we still drop the damn ball.
Well, at least you know what you did, Joe, is you made a perfect argument for how localism can work. You gave an absolutely perfect argument that it can work. People said, hey, well, this is impossible, Dale. Well, there's an example of how it works. The Orthodox Jewish community. They take care of their family because their faith is important to them, and then they do business with each other. They keep their dollars local too, so they support each other. But they're not communists, and they're not runaway capitalists. They are localists. That's the point. And guess who benefits? Everybody in that community.
Dale,
Well,
it can be done. And here's another, just to piggyback, it can be done. They do it and they thrive.
Well, Joe, I was going to say to you, I agree with you when you say it could be done, but we grew up at a time, North Newark, New Jersey, okay? We grew up at a time where what you described, we actually had. It's not something, I agree with you, Joe, but we did have that because when you were growing up, your old man went to the butcher. Your old man was a barber. So
Yep.
you didn't go to like one of these chains or whatever. He was
Right.
the local barber, right? You went to you had a local pharmacy. It wasn't it was Eddie Ponzini who owned the local pharmacy, or it was Alphonse the butcher. We did have that, and it did work. Now again, there's a lot of arguments as to why that got wrecked. Some people would say that it was deliberately so. Some people would say that these were Catholic enclaves, that some people thought that Catholics had too much power in these places. And quite frankly, we had more political power when we lived in, let's say, a more urban setting, okay, like North Newark, New Jersey. But it did work, Joe. It did, and people thrived. Your fathers went out and they had union jobs. Okay. My father worked for Consolidated Freightways, or you had an uncle who was in the construction workers union or the longshoremen's union. Okay. They had good wages and they spent their dollars locally and they support. So my larger point to you, Joe, is that you're right, but we did also have that. No, and we let it go.
So you both proved the point. You both proved, first of all, localism does work. You also proved it has worked. Now the next thing is we have to make it work again. And again, it starts by just educating ourselves and start making some changes in our lives for the good of our families and our local community. And it can be done. People have always dismissed distributism and said, well, it'll never happen. Well, that's what's first thing, we changed the name to localism. And so people can start to resonate with something that they can relate to right away. And then we give examples of how it works. And the thing about the book is full of practical ways that we can start making changes. But as Chesterton says, it begins with a tendency against a tendency. If you don't do anything, of course, nothing's going to change. But if you can start making some small changes, those can they can have ramifications. We talk about the free market. Let's talk about the farmer's market. Let's have a farmer's market in our local communities. That's what the marketplace is supposed to be. It's a coming together to exchange goods. It's not supposed to be, doing things on the computer to enhance your portfolio. That's not the market. The market is doing business with your neighbor. It's a personal human thing. And that's the market that we've gotten away from.
Dale Ahlquist joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Please go out, buy his book, Localism, Coming Home to Catholic Social Teaching. Dale, let me ask you a question. You're talking about ownership, distributism, ownership, widespread ownership. Okay. I agree with you. I think everybody, people should own things. I think that's why the oligarchs of the world try to convince you you don't want to own things. You should just rent and you'll be happy. At least that's what Klaus Schwab tells us. Here's my question. I don't know, if you have an opinion, if you even include it in the book, the current means by which most families own a home, a lot of people would say needs to be changed, meaning compound interest, meaning you go out and you buy, you can't buy a better piece of property because the interest, now interest rates have gone up, and now even when they were lower, you're paying too much in interest and not enough for the property, but you want to own the property and you got to go to the bank. And I would just love your opinion on, I've heard that the Muslims have a different system because they don't have an interest rate, usurious system. Is there an alternative to be able to, for us, to be able to buy a piece of property without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars over 30 years in interest?
Yeah, there is an alternative, but again, it happens locally, and it's called local banks, local credit unions. Again, you keep your money local so that when you borrow from your local credit union or your local community bank, those dollars stay in the community, and then they can help someone else then too. And you're basically sharing a pool of money. And it's the compound interest is you're right. That's a very bad system. It's called an unproductive loan. That's what's condemned by the Catholic Church.
Usually, about that
is the Catholic Church, and everyone has forgotten that. They think, oh yeah, the church doesn't condemn that anymore. That's because you don't hear them condemn. Usury is still a sin, but there's a productive loan, and a productive loan is, I'm going to give you money. If you do something with it, I get to benefit from it along with you, and if you lose it, then I lose it too. That's. But it doesn't mean I'm going to just come and take your home from you, because that's not a Christian thing to do, is take someone's home. You help them figure out a way to keep their home. And so the idea of there's a cost involved with giving someone money, but that's the only thing that the borrower should be paying is the cost of the lender giving them, not to just enhance and enlarge the lender's wealth. And yeah, that can be done again at a local, and it would be revolutionary. That would be revolutionary.
Well, more people would be owners, Dale.
Yeah.
Owners.
Yeah.
You get what you want.
Yep.
It's what you're talking about.
Yep.
More widespread ownership of property. Okay. Because now it's a lot easier to own a piece of property, to own a home. Because I don't know if people realize, if they ever do a calculation, if you're paying a home over 30 years and you put in the interest and you calculate the interest, you're really going to want to second guess your decision to take out that $500,000 loan. Joe Resinella.
Let's talk about another example of doing, because I agree with everything you said, and I think we can do it if we put our minds to it, but people don't know how to live anymore. They don't know how to live anymore, and the proof's in the pudding, Dale. It's not working. It's not working. I say this all the time on the show. G.K. Chesterton, common sense. Doesn't work. What's going on? Doesn't work, guys. Try to, but ultimately, we got to kind of circle the wagons a little bit. When, as a father, you have 6 kids. I know you have 6. I got 5. I want them to thrive. I don't want them to get swallowed up by this world. Catholics have to look out. If you take your faith seriously, look at the fruit of our decisions. This isn't working, guys. Sorry, doesn't work. Now let's bump it up a little bit. Our priests, our bishops, they're fathers, they're pastors. We got to circle the wagons. The Jews do it, so do the Muslims. I'm going to give you an example. I was in India, and some women that I was traveling with, they were going to a tailor, and the tailor had a lot of brothers and sisters. And what they did to protect themselves, in an unjust society was they pooled the money together as a family to take care of their own. You see, we can do that too. We take care of our own. That's what a family does. We take
Amen.
care of our own. Catholics have to take care of their own because the world's out to get us. Oh, Joe, you're a victim. No, I'm not a victim. I'm in the world. I'm slugging it out every day. I'm in the world. I'm not hiding on a homestead. I live and work in New York City, but we got to take care of our own. We have to, because no one's going to do it. Talk
Yeah.
about that, because we're not, Dale. We just go
Yeah.
along. We go along.
So a book came out a few years ago called The Benedict, and you probably heard about that one,
Mhm.
Rod Dreher, and that was talking about a little bit what you're saying, Joe. There's a little bit of a circle the wagon mentality that Catholics have to start creating communities again, and taking care of themselves. Well, in a way, this book is the beginnings of a handbook on how to do it. Not only the theoretical argument for why these local communities have to take care of, starting with Catholics, but it also gives practical suggestions on how to do it. But again, Chesterton says it can't be done by people, it has to be done by people. And we do need a spiritual, religious revival and renewal in order
Amen.
for us to make it happen.
Boom.
And again, that starts with us.
Yes.
Who's representing the Catholic Church? It's not the Pope. It's you and me to represent the church to our neighbor, so that when they see us, they say, I want what he has. I want the Catholic Church. And I want the lifestyle that he's created for his family and for his community, because that's more stable and attractive than the wind chasing that I'm doing right now. And you saw something that you admired in that Orthodox community, Orthodox Jewish community. You knew that they are stable and that they are producing happy families. We have to make that same witness to the world. It starts at the local level with local Catholics, and priests and bishops have to understand this too. They have to understand Catholic social teaching, because a lot of them don't. If they were starting to teach this from the pulpit in the K-8 schools, that's how you could transform it from the bottom up.
And you're right. And, I mean, I send my kids to Catholic school. It costs a fortune, Dale. I live in a box because of it. I mean, you could tell I'm insane because I mean, I'm living it. I'm trying, but my point is it's too much money. You see, again, like it's built for the very successful family. And I mean, I'm not tooting my own horn, but me and my wife do okay. So we can do it. What about the receptionist? Why does her kid have to get subjected to this garbage? Most Catholics aren't MBA holders. Most of them aren't. Most parents, frankly, can't homeschool. The father doesn't have benefits. The mother might not speak English. And we just let them get destroyed. We do. We're supposed to shepherd our people. You know what I'm saying? Like, all of us here are kind of gifted. Like,
but that's
let's be
also a
honest.
matter of but that's also a matter of political will. I'll throw this over to Dale. I live in Arizona now. All right, I did move out of New Jersey a couple years ago. Now here, as opposed to the basket case known as the state of New Jersey, okay, here the public funds are used not just for public schools but also charter schools. So and the charter system that my son goes to, where my wife teaches, okay, basically models their education on the traditional Catholic model, liberal education. My son is in 8th grade. He's learning Latin in school, foundations of Latin, just to give you an example. Again, slaying false idols. People say, no, you got to support public school. Well, the charter school is a public school. They ask for a donation from the parents, something modest to help them keep going. Plus, they get tax dollars. I mean, there's an example, a perfect example of how things like you guys we're talking about, the localism works very well, because this charter school crushes the public school.
And of course, some states are finally understanding that they can also give public dollars to Catholic parents who are sending their kids to Catholic schools, which has been one of the greatest fallacies of misinterpret of the First Amendment there ever has been, to to not be able to allow for school choice. So that, as a Catholic parent, I get to pay the taxes to support the public school. Then I also have to pay to send my kids to the Catholic school on top of that. That's been, a huge burden for Catholic parents. But some states are finally, making these laws of school choice available. And of course, they're seeing immediate benefits to the community when they do it, because it'll make the public schools up their game when they realize that they are also in competition, and they don't just get to feed at the public trough and expect the dollars to keep coming, because, when the public school classrooms empty out, then maybe we can have an educational reform.
Well,
But it has to happen locally.
yeah, Localism, Coming Home to Catholic Social Teaching is the title of the book, available at Sophia Institute Press. Click the link in the description. You'll get a discount from Sophia, because Joe and Joe. The author's with us, Dale Ahlquist. We love Dale. We've had him on the show a couple times, and we could talk to Dale for hours. Let me see, Dale, because we have limited time left, and it seemed like you were touching on something I was going to ask you about anyway, okay? The fallacy of the separation of church and state. Joe and I believe that to be one of the biggest lies there is. Okay, it's not in the Constitution. The free exercise of my religion is in the First Amendment of the Constitution. Separation of church and state is not even found in our founding documents. People don't, again, education. People don't realize that. We have to get this out of our head, that the church has nothing to say. The church, the way I've always heard it, is that the church is to the state what the soul is to the body. Okay, yes, the church absolutely has a voice, particularly in the things that we're talking about, whether it's economics, education, and so forth. Okay. And we have to win that. We have to take that battle back, is my larger point, Dale. And I'd love your comments on it. No. The church is intimately involved in what goes on in society. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's absolutely crucial. But the proof is in the pudding. We have to start making changes to our society at the local level, and that's where Catholics have to show what they've got, and that there'll be greater respect for the church from all levels if we can do great things as Catholics, and that is, to bring saintly people into the world through our families. That's what's going to
100%.
transform the society. And
Dale,
yeah,
100%.
and then you have the instant respect of elected officials when you can provide evidence of positive social change through the work of the church, and they will work side beside you all the way. We have a great Archbishop in St. Paul, Minneapolis, where I'm from, and he works very hard with the state, and basically, when he disagrees with them, he will make big acts on his own, and the state comes and listens to him when he makes it. He got our churches back open during COVID when he just announced one day the churches are going to be open, and then the government returned his. The governor finally stopped. He was not returning his phone calls. Then the governor we got to meet, because he led the way. He led the way, and that's what we need. Our church. Not just church leaders, but Catholics themselves. The people are the ones that change society. That's what's going to work. I know you agree with me on this.
No, I do.
We are
I would
fellow
tell
warriors. We're
Dale Ahlquist. I would say this. The way I always look at it is, I think there's a misconception that when you're conciliatory towards our godless society as a Catholic, you gain people's respect. No. People don't respect you. As a Catholic, they don't respect the church when the church is lukewarm. They respect the church. I mean, you could just look at the production code in Hollywood for 35 years. Okay, that was Roman Catholics acting as Roman Catholics. You want to talk about controlling your dollars? Saying we're not going to support your movies if you put profanity, nudity, or blasphemy in your movies. We're not going to support your movies. And what did they get? Respect.
And great
when you're wishy-washy.
That's
look
right.
what Governor Cuomo did to Cardinal Dolan.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, on the issue of school choice. Okay, because Cuomo respects Dolan.
Right. You're a great. Joe.
Go ahead.
How about Two? All right. Church has been wedded to the world, but it's always been widowed by the world.
Here's a great quote.
100%.
A quote.
I mean,
That's where we go.
ultimately, Dale, we have to take our faith serious.
Amen.
Everything you said, I agree. Listen, I'm doing it. I mean,
Amen.
like, I don't go along, and I'll be honest with you, I don't get invited to the barbecue, Dale. I was once cool.
Coming to my
Dale.
barbecue.
I was once very
My
cool.
barbecue.
I'm just, I'll be honest with you. I don't care. And
Joe, we're out of time. Joe, I got to cut you off. We're out of time. I want to give Dale a chance to let everybody know. People with this
please.
Chesterton schools.
Go to chesterton.org to learn more about Chesterton, the work we do. Go to chestertonschools.com to learn about the Chesterton Academies. I'd like to invite everybody to our conference this summer outside of Philadelphia, July 25th through 27th. And we're going to be hitting on all these topics. We'll be talking about this book, Localism, at the Chesterton conference. You can learn about .org.
So remember, it's coming teaching. Please purchase it from the publisher, Sophia Press, the author, who was gracious enough to come on the front line with Joe and Joe and have a great conversation. Dale Ahlquist. We all could learn a lot from Dale. So please, not just this book, support Chesterton Academy. Dale, Joe and I say on the show all the time, our guests are not here to, per se to educate our audience. You're also here to educate Joe and me. Okay, we all need to raise our consciousness. We all need to expand our knowledge. We all need to know about the things that you're writing about, that Chesterton wrote about. Okay, over 100 years ago. So brother, you honor us by coming on the show, and we really appreciate it. We know we'll be talking to you at some point, hopefully in the very near future.
I look forward to it already. God bless you guys.
God bless you, Dale, and thank you out there for joining us at the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith to the New York City metropolitan area. Download the app, share it with your friends, share this conversation with your friends, and you'll also have access to all of our station's content. If you like what Joe and I do, remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.